to have this dialogue with my colleague. Please, over to you for your introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, Anila. My name is Peter Odengo. I'm from the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning from Kenya. I coordinate the financing locally led climate action and also the president of Africa Climate Finance Climate Funds National Designated Authorities. Anita, it has been great to meet with you from the country from Netherlands. And as we are aware that a number of things are going on. Please, can you just give us a very brief background on what you are doing
Yes.
as we dig deeper into this?
Sure, sure.
Over to you.
Thank you so much, Peter. So yes, we are based in Netherlands in Europe, but we are working to bring the displaced community, especially women, refugee voices, and people who are always being left behind, their voices in the policy domain. At New Women Connectors, we are trying to bring new knowledges, new approaches, new ask to the community, for the community. And women mean we are connecting the experience of women globally, and to connect how women are enhancing the climate resilience, and also connecting as a connector. We are connecting the knowledges, we are connecting the policy, we are connecting the local to global, global to local. So that's what we are trying to do, and super happy to be here.
Great. Indigenous peoples are very critical in terms of conservation, in terms of their indigenous knowledge. And how can indigenous governance and traditional knowledge be effectively integrated into national climate strategies at the national level?
Yes, very good question, Peter. You can imagine when we are talking about knowledge, it means we are talking about generation knowledge. It means we are talking about those routine, those habits, those practices we have been used from century and century. But unfortunately, due to some reason, we are not labeling them. Let me give you an example. Actually, I born and raised up in country like Pakistan, and being living in Pakistan, I saw my granny, my grandparents, my neighbors. If we have something, we never let it to waste. We reuse it. We try to make it how we can use it in multiple ways, but we never name it recycling or upscaling. So this is the knowledge which is in our practice. So that is missing, how these people are not being getting their acknowledgement to taking the knowledge. Unfortunately, because Western countries or Western knowledge is dominant, and that's why their dominance is more prominent. But we are making sure we acknowledge other knowledges is very important, and to bring the decolonization in this discussion.
Great. Now we are at the third generation of NDC. The first one, the second one, and now the NDC 3.0. Generally, in countries, you find NDCs are being made by consultants in the workshops in high hotel. How is there any model? What model do exist to incorporate the indigenous people's knowledge and also to involve the indigenous people in co-developing of these NDCs? Because NDCs, the National Adaptation Plan, the NAMAS, etc., requires local knowledge and local ownership. Is there any model existing, Anita?
I think there are few practices has been started to involve all the people. Like in my work, when we say nothing about us without us, so it means we are bringing the people not only to listen to their stories, or not only just to listen to their practices, but how we make sure they are involving it in a meaningful way. In a meaningful participation is very important. We need to understand these communities has access to the information, have access to the policy domain, so they can present their knowledges. And we need to actually make a accountability to ask them to look around on the table who is there and who is missing, and make sure those voices are there, but also to go and connect with those people is very important.
Great. In the development of NDCs, governments, given that the indigenous people always stay in far-fetched areas which are not reachable, how can governments involve the indigenous people and ensure that they are part and parcel of decision making and not as just mere stakeholders?
Indeed, indeed. As I said already, it's very important. So it's a cycle. It's a cycle how we need to implement in infinity approach. So make sure when we are co-designing the agenda. These people have the access to designing the agenda, to designing the discussion, and also because these people are on the edge, on the forefront of disaster. So we really need to involve them. Otherwise, it's feel like someone, if you go to doctor and you are not explaining your problem, and your brother or sister or your neighbor is explaining their problem, so how is gonna work, how he gonna you get cure. So it's very important these people who are impacted, they should be defining what is the problem, what's the solution, and they have to be part of the discussion, not only as a beneficiary or not as a community, but as a partner, so they can make sure the burden responsibility not only on their selves, but they are having resources to implement these solutions.
Uh, what mechanisms are needed to ensure that indigenous people's participation in the NDC development, national adaptation plans, and all policies and strategies are integrated within the process and they have a voice and not just photos and pictures?
Indeed, I think it's very easy. We first of all we need a motivation from the policymaker, so they shift their power, they open up their spaces. That's why we are advocating for meaningful participation. It's mean people who has information and they have the resources and the power to be involved and to make sure how this process works and to simplify the discussion, simplify the language, simplify the jargons for the communities. So they feel they have the enough information how this system works and how they can elaborate and connect. And similar for the policymaker, they need to understand actually how to support and how to encourage these communities. So they feel like we are doing because we need these communities, not to give them a favor.
Uh, Currently, there have been a number of conflicts with indigenous peoples within their areas of jurisdiction, where governments, companies, the private sector identify areas of potential natural resources, for example, critical minerals. Now, what are the safeguards which need to be put in place to ensure that the interests of indigenous people within their locality and their ecosystem is safeguarded from the external interference based on your wide experience in this field, Anita?
Yes, I think there's a link which we are not connecting: displacement, conflict, and these people who are on the move. How when they move, these problems move with them. So, but there are a few IDPs, internally displaced people, and there are community who don't wanna be moved. Who don't want to be resettled in other countries. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to go to the basics. If we address the human right basic declaration, giving them access, giving them education, giving them right to participate, giving them right of education, giving them the right of movement if they want to move, is very important to they have access to their rights but also advocate for their rights. So we know how these policies are working or not working. And maybe sometime we really, as a policymakers, they need to really listen and to stop what they are doing and to check why we are failing. It's already 2026, if I may say, but we are failing the people, and the climate disaster is becoming increased, and how we are trying to understand the community needs is very important. Peter, I want to ask you actually. I will take the table and I want to ask you a question. I would love to know how in East Africa, especially you are based in Kenya and working with the finance and climate, how you are helping community bringing the local solution in your experience, and what best practices you can share and other countries can learn from you.
Thank you very much, Anita. In Kenya and in East Africa, we are working very closely with the local communities. And what we have learned over the last 10 years also is that in order to include the local people, give them the power and decision to participate, you need proactive policies, which is co-created by the people indigenous themselves. Number two, climate change is a very critical aspect of development. It is complex, it is not easily understood by the local people. And in this case, the first entry point is first to create an enabling environment, awareness, and involve the local communities, and in this case, indigenous people, by themselves, by their own focal points, and capacity build them so that they can now stand and, and bring in the contribution from the lowest person of the whatever. Let me give you an example on how we do it in Kenya. In Kenya, we have a program called Financing Locally Led Climate Action. Financing Locally Led Climate Action is a bottom-up model development approach where the information is coming from the lowest level possible. That is household. Then it comes to the subnational ward, and then the people themselves are brought in together under what we call participatory climate risk assessment. Participatory climate risk assessment is done at a village level. We believe that the people themselves know where the hotspots of climate change. Once they have identified those critical areas, then those communities are now integrated at the ward level. And then the ward level, we form what is called the governance at the lowest level. Ward planning committees, ward steering committee, ward project management committee. Now, these are institutions which are created within. And then after that, then all those are now integrated where after they prioritize the 4 key areas within their adaptive and resilient building, then it is now brought up to the national to link them with the policies, strategies, and the development plans. Once it is linked with the CIDPs, we call county integrated development plans, then it is now concept notes are being developed. But the concept notes which are being developed are the concept note which is originated from the people themselves. Nobody, not Aneta, not Peter Odengo, not my friend here, Mohammed, can change it. So what are we showing here? We are giving the local people the power and the money to decide what will they do. And we have more than 2,450 projects where the people, and I will share with you what I've got now with the World Bank, that is giving power to the powerless people.
Wow. Very impressive, very impressive. So my next question is like, all in this journey in localization and empowerment, how you are integrating the gender perspective, because as I said, we are making sure women also part of this discussion. So if you could tell what lesson you can share, barriers, or maybe some actors you feel like we really need to enhance the capacity building or the woman, if you can share how you are taking the gender element in your work.
Fantastic. Gender, youth, and people living with disabilities involvement in programs and development has been cosmetic. But in our case, we introduced a model which is called P4R, performance for result. One of the conditions that will enable a community or subnational to get more money is, first of all, for you to qualify, you must include at least 30% of the participants within the management committees. I said ward planning committee must be women. Another 30% must be you. Another 30% must be people living with disability. If you look at that, that is to enable you qualify minimum performance. It means that over 90% is comprising of people with different challenges. Only 10% is preserved for you and I, because we are able and we can adapt and we can build resilience. So the more you involve women, the more you will get the max minimum performance measures. And then when you get the max, that max is going to be computed in terms of money. So the more you involve them, the more you will get. P4R is a very good catalytic incentive program where people who have not been involved have to be involved. Any meeting where there is no segregation by gender, youth, and people living with disability will automatically be disqualified. It has worked, and it is working, but we are not yet there. Some of these people with disabilities have to be brought to the fore. The awareness must be created so that they participate, because it's not about the number of women, it is about the quality and the quantity of what they get. If it is water, how many people living with disability is getting 10 liters of water per second per hour? We have the modern, we are developing decision and money, and they decide on how they use it. With this, today, with in cooperation with the world economic, even within the local cities, we are happy that something is happening. Innovations are bringing in the people who would have been left behind. And under the principle of no one should be left behind and no one should pull anybody behind. So this is how we are ensuring that we carry on. But for Afghan, the Kenyan example has now to be spread all over the continent. As we are talking now, we have already supported Tanzania. They have got now their scale is called the Blocker Tanzania. Now we are working with the Blocker in Mozambique. And by the way, Mozambique have been to Kenya and they have learned under the South-South Cooperation, and within the network they have established a whole institutional department, directorate. Liberia is the same, Sierra Leone is the same, Congo Brazzaville is the same, where we were with this man. So we have a wonderful landscape approach. And that landscape approach, climate change will not wait for one village to fix its problem. And then after that, then you go back to the next. That will be called maladaptation. So we are now championing a whole landscape approach. We no longer need to pilot. You cannot pilot if there is no water here. Then you leave this point. Then you go do it there for 3 years. Then when you come back here, there is no water. So we are not doing anything. We must change the way we are approaching climate change. It has to be a full-fledged landscape.
Amazing, amazing. Wow. Yes, I love what you said, like 30% allocation for disabled community, 30% for the youth, and 30% of women is already like 90%. It means we are including everyone. Very amazing. Yes, thank you so much.
When you are passing Africa, please come to Kenya. We take you to the
100%,
village and see
100%.
how
Yes.
we can make sure that migration, youth running out from their villages because there is no food,
Yeah.
we are going to fix it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed, indeed. I will make sure. Yeah.
I know we have a very active audience. Is there any one of you who has got a question for either me, the moderator, or my as a facilitator, or Aneta, so that we can clarify some of the action? Over to you. Any question? Yes.
We have one question. Yes, please.
Yes,
Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Walter Muturi from Kenya. I work the Climate Finance and Economy Unit with VITA. My question is, are there any formal way of packaging that indigenous knowledge so that it is secured and passed down to other generations in a formal way? Because most of the time, what the indigenous people know about climate action and of course the track record they have on how they manage climate impacts is not formally packaged so that it is handed down to the generation. Is there a plan or a way you intend to ensure they are packaging that indigenous knowledge?
Thank you so much for your question. I think already Peter mentioned this mechanism, like how we allocate and make sure when we are setting the agenda, when we are, creating few policies, when we are creating a new evidence-based research, we make indicators. I think I will say this how Peter mentioned the allocation of percentage. We make sure we are understanding their need, we are understanding their requirement, not to, as I said earlier, to favor, but making sure this meaningful participation and inclusive approach, if we have this checklist, we are making sure their voices are there. We are giving them capacity building, we are giving them resources, and we are giving them opportunity and open spaces and welcome spaces where they feel be part of discussion, part of solution, and make sure this implementation happens. Because I think enough of call to action. This is time for action. So let's do that action collectively, and if we see action are not inclusive, how we stand together in solidarity to make us stop. Because enough is enough. There's no planet B. This is our own responsibility. Like if I am going, I'm making sure I'm sharing the information to those people who are not informed, who are not being part of discussion. And same goes when we go invited and we making sure asking them who's else on the table. So it's very important. We are checking each other.
Mr. Bo, Mr. Bo, you have been in this field and you have been part and parcel of the World Green Economic Organization. You have also been NDA to the GCF in Morocco. You have also been a very key part of PAC, Africa Private Sector Alliance. Private sector always fear indigenous people, but indigenous people are the custodian of the resource.
Thank you very much because the debate was very, very important today. I have one question for you. Before, no, because when we talk about indigenous people, have to formalize, have to formalize their integration in the climate finance because you know that, Peter, I know that Peter that did a huge job in Kenya because right now how to formalize, to legitimate the action of indigenous people to be heard and the voice of this population be integrated in the process of unlocking finance for them. This is what we.
Mohammed, thank you very much. Your question is very, very critical. How do we legitimize and make sure that the indigenous people are part and parcel in accessing climate finance? It is critical, and what we have done, for example, within the financing locally led climate action, the program is divided into two financing mechanisms: institutional grants for support, and then county climate investment grant too. Within the institutional support, we have a special window for the civil society organization. The civil society organization within the program is divided into two. There is the one specifically dedicated to the indigenous people, and then there is another one dedicated to civil society or organization. We have the data, and for the last 2 years, indigenous people have been supported to the tune of 40 to 50 million. That is 500,000 US dollars. There are 16 indigenous organizations in Kenya, and we have funded them as indigenous, and the indigenous are also part and parcel. They are sitting in the steering committee of the financing locally led climate action. ILEPA is sitting in the steering committee so that the voice of the indigenous people is within the steering committee, it's within the design. But we have gone beyond. We have gone beyond that. Within the GCF itself, we had even moved and catalyzed ILO, International Labour Organization, to come up and design a specific program, readiness program, funding for the indigenous people in Kenya. And if you meet anybody in Kenya here, an indigenous person, definitely you will get that. So we
Amazing.
very,
Amazing.
very, very critical.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think, Aneta, we
Yes.
need to have work with you again.
Yes.
Make this one bigger a reality
Yeah.
and also expand it
Wow.
to Morocco in Tangier.
Yeah, nice, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Peter. Now we are almost end of our session. I would like to request you if you have any recommendation or anything you like to say to our audience as a follow-up steps.
Great. What we need is for the audience, we need to maximize and involve the indigenous people. We start with indigenous people's policy, indigenous people's strategy, indigenous people's governance system for themselves, indigenous people fund so that they can decide on how they manage that. And finally, no private sector should get into the indigenous land without their consent. My grandmother must be provided with the legal instruments. The information should be interpreted in her own local language before she signs anything in carbon, anything in any extraction. No, they must be part and parcel of the process. That is my
Yeah,
take.
thank you,
And that's
Peter.
what we
Thank
need
you
to
so
follow
much.
up.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for having us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much, Anita. It is great that you just came and got it done. Thank you.
But I have to do the